Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. Hope you are all well. Just doing a few final quick checks before we get into it. Just wait for a few more people to arrive. And then we should be cooking and good to go. Well, I think that's everybody in. We'll get started then. So hello, I'm Owen. I'm head of technical support here at senso.cloud. Obviously based here in the UK. I've also got a special voice in my head, which is Lisa, who's my counterpart over in the US. So she's going to help monitor any questions and shout them down through my ear if you do have any. Obviously, if you do have any questions, just fire them through. They'll get picked up and I'll answer them as soon as I get to any pauses. What we'll be covering today is so based on my own past experience when I used to work as an infrastructure engineer for a local authority. I also was a network manager in a school and also an IT technician and started off as an apprentice as well. So I've got a lot of experience of using Senso and other tools like ours in school environments, and also from a network manager's perspective and using Senso as an IT tool. What I'm going to be covering today is basically everything that you can do as a network admin. I won't be going through any of the teacher tools. I'll probably only be sticking to the network manager tools. The only times I will touch any of the teacher tools will be when when it's a tool that will be quite useful for yourselves to use, or when we're talking about policies. I'll also be covering as well recommendations or personal recommendations from myself. So this is recommendations around how you should ideally group your devices in each one of your sites. Again, these are recommendations based on personal experience and also my team's experience as well. We'll also be going through policies. Policies is a very, very powerful tool, and I always call it group policy on steroids. We'll be going through that. I'll also cover through some of the permissions and the roles, and also doing the recommendations on roles and how you can add your users. And then I'll finish off by going through the data sync stuff, so around Microsoft Teamsync and your Google Classroom, and also going through CPOMs and my concern as well, if it's needed. But like I say, any questions, fire them away, and Lisa will pass them through to me as I'm going along. Cool. Okay, so I'm sure as most of you will know that this is the Senso Portal. We're logged in as an organization admin on my tenancy at the moment called Senso Demo Academy. I'm going to be spending a lot of my focus on the Senso Telford School on the left-hand side. And you can see underneath there that I've got my little grouping structure underneath here. To represent what each one of these levels mean, you've got the Senso Demo Academy at the top level. So this is what we call your organization level, and your organization level is represented by your license key. So this is all of your devices within your license key right now that are connected and online. If we move a step further down to the site levels, this then obviously is represented by your site ID, which you can find in the admin center under sites. So that is represented by this name here. So right now I'm looking at Senso Telford School, and this is showing me all devices across all of Senso Telford School. And then underneath, we've got the groups that we manually filter ourselves under here. As you can see, what I've done here is I've got 3 nested groups. I've got device groups, I've got policy groups, and I've got user groups. With my device groups, what I like to do in here is I like to add room numbers. So for example, if I've got a IT suite called IT Suite 1, I would call it IT1 or IT Suite 1, and I'd add all of the devices based on that room number. And these are obviously device named groups or device AD groups that we're filtering into here. Skipping over policy groups, user groups would be essentially, we want to look at all the current students logged in, or we want to look at all the current teachers logged into their network. And we usually base these off user security, AD security groups, or user OU groups. And also username filters as well. Going into the filters themselves, you'll see obviously a number of options. You've got the group name. You can also change the parent group name in here. You've got group priority, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And then obviously you've got the different filters underneath here. And you can obviously filter by device name, remote host, username, AD group, IP address, email, domain. AD group is a bit more than just AD group. It represents AD security groups of the user and device, and it also represents the AD organization units that they're a part of. And it also does the Azure Active Directory security groups. So if you've authorized Azure AD groups in your data sync, which I'll show you in a bit, that will then show all the Azure AD groups of the logged in user, and it only does it for the logged in user only. And you can then filter these groups based on those. Especially helpful for those of you that are planning to move to Intune only sort of environments. Here in the office where we work, we're all 100% Intune. We have no on-site AD or anything like that, so we use Azure AD ourselves. Going on to policy groups now. This is a bit more of a longer conversation. This is then going to lead me on into talking about policies. With policy groups, we recommend that when you're creating your policies, instead of applying your policies at a site level or an organization level, we recommend that you do targeted group policies essentially. So you're targeting that there's very specific users that you want these policies to affect. Now, obviously, if you want to affect all users, you can still do that within the groups. But the power of doing it this way is, say, for example, you do your safeguarding policy or your login and blocking policy, and you set your policy up on one of these groups in here. Let's just go through and do an example now, actually, while we're here. Safeguarding. We're going to move the parent group because I put it on the wrong one. We're going to talk about group priority. So the group priority as well is very important. So if you've got, say for example, you've got 2 login and blocking policies that are applying to a user or a device, and you want one particular policy to take priority over the others, what you need to make sure that you do is you pay particular attention to these group priorities, and this applies for all modules as well. So your acceptable use policies or your settings policies or anything like that, you need to pay particular attention to your group priorities, because whatever the highest number is the one that takes precedence over the other one. So making sure that you do that for this and pay particular attention to this is very important on that. And then when you're putting your group filters in, say for example, I want this safeguarding policy to apply to every single device that's on the network. I can add a wildcard symbol in there. Now, I've then had, I don't know, a member of the senior leadership team or designated safeguard lead who has said that they do not want this user being monitored or safe, or they want a reduced amount of safeguarding applied to a particular user. So what I could do in here is I can add another filter in here, and let's say I use the username and the guy's name's Bob. So I'm going to put Bob in here, and then I'm going to change this from like to not like. So when Bob logs in into a device, they're automatically going to fall out of this security. They're going to automatically fall out of this group, and what that will mean is that they will no longer have the safeguarding policy applied to them. This is the benefit of doing it via a group, because we can't do this when you do it at a site level or an organization level, because those are obviously defined by a site ID file and a license key file. There's no way to exclude users or devices out of those. Doing it via a group, we have this power and control to actually exclude them from here. And the other thing is as well, the other big benefit of doing it this way is with having the policy groups, I know each individual group what that job is intended for. So I know that with this safeguarding group, I know that what that's going to be doing right now. And what I can do for Bob now, my own personal experience, my own recommendations is I still want Bob to be monitored, but all the customers said that they want it reduced. So what I can then do is I can then create a second group for Bob safeguarding. I can then basically use a name on like Bob. So when Bob logs into a computer, instead of him, he'll automatically fall out of the other safeguarding policy that I didn't finish setting up, to be fair, but he will then fall into the Bob safeguarding group. And within this, I can then set up my policy. I can then apply a completely different set of rules, perhaps a reduced amount of login or very specific login, because obviously Bob may deal with a lot of sensitive information. So you may want to exclude any violations occurring on Outlook, or you may want to exclude any violations occurring on Word, etc. Don't appear to have any questions yet, do we, Lisa? Don't think Lisa can hear me, actually, thinking about it. No, I'm sorry. Oh, that's okay, no problem. Hi, Alex, I can see the screen, etc. Cool. Okay. Moving on then, on to policies themselves, so setting the policies up themselves. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a look at the safeguarding policy too. So I'm going to quickly set up a group here called safeguarding, because I did it in the wrong place last time. I'm going to leave the group priority to 100, and then what I wanted to do, I wanted to apply to every single device within Senso Telford School. So I've now got my safeguarding policy group. I'm now going to move over to policies. So within the policies here, we want to add the policy. A top recommendation from myself: never enable a policy until you have configured it. Vitally important, especially when you are doing things with end session, like shutdown policies or restart policies, and you're doing them on a schedule. The moment you apply, if you leave this enabled, the moment you add a module into the policy, that module is going to kick in and start immediately from adding it. So if you do an end session policy and you haven't added a schedule in it and you've left that enabled, your entire network will get shut down, or whatever devices you got filtered in will get shut down. And we have had examples of that in the past. So we always recommend that you do not enable this until you've got the policy configured. Once you've got the policy in there, all this is basically this is like a policy holder item. And what we want to do is start adding modules into here. And I want to go into the login and blocking policy. So we hit the green plus symbol, come into type, and then we go to login and blocking. So this is our safeguarding policy. And in here, we can obviously add all the items and the things that we want to affect. And there's a couple of sections that I wanted to highlight to you yourselves in here as techs. So you may have heard me before that you can obviously exclude certain windows or certain applications from raising a violation, and this is that particular section here. So what you can do is, based on the window caption, you can actually exclude things like Outlook, for example. So you may want to exclude the member of the SLT team's Outlook from being violated, because they may type a lot of keywords or violations into there. So what you can do is the window caption is anything at the top here. So for example, right now, my window caption is going to be Senso console. There is also a hidden element to this where it's going to have the Google Chrome part to it. You can also look within the logging under violation logs on the right hand side under window title. Anything in here can also be added as the exclusion, and it's wildcarded as well, so you don't have to enter the full path of the window title, you just have to add an element of the window title. Also make note as well that it is case sensitive as well, so just be aware that anything that you put in here is case sensitive, so it needs to match what it does exactly say in the window title itself. You could also obviously as well exclude certain keywords. So if there's certain keywords you're not interested in getting violations for, you've got that power as well to do all of that in there. The other important sections as well within this policy are the don't monitor or log the following applications. So what this will do is it will prevent the Senso application from injecting its DLL into the application, and it will no longer log that application. It won't block that application. So if you try to block the application with another policy or anything like that, this is basically going to stop that from being able to do that. It'll also prevent allow apps from blocking the application, and a number of other things as well. Not a lot will affect it. However, web filtering will still affect the applications, which is where we now move on to the next three sections down here, these boxes here, where you've got only filter the following application, SSL application name or path exclusions, or allow the following IP addresses to bypass the SSL filter. Now, Senso SSL inspects all traffic on the client, and because we've got this set to .exe by default, it SSL inspects every single application's internet connections. Now, we recommend you keep it on .executable, because the reason being is if you've got a little darling that comes into school with a USB stick with a random browser that nobody's ever heard of in their life, you can plug that in. They can obviously plug that in, open up the browser. Senso will still be able to pick up that traffic, still be able to add any blocks to it, still be able to kill down any of the websites. If you've got disabled internet, it should still apply the disabled internet to it, and they won't be able to get around it. If you get specific where you actually add what browsers or what applications you only want it to affect, obviously that's fine, you can do that, but you will miss out on protecting those devices from any rogue applications that the kids bring in when it comes to filtering and internet connections. With the next two boxes though, Senso is quite powerful in the fact that it can, and I'm not aware of many filters that can actually do this in the world, but Senso is actually able to exclude individual applications from having SSL inspection or any traffic monitored on them. So for example, you've got an app, say for example Sims or something from your MIS or SIS, depending on what you use, and it's an application on a computer, you can exclude the internet traffic for that. So we can know it'll basically stop any SSL inspection coming from that traffic, and it'll work as expected. If you're going to a website that's being SSL inspected and you don't want it to be SSL inspected, you can add the application in here. And with all of these boxes that we're looking at here, and including the don't monitor and log, everything is automatically wildcarded, and it's based on the full application file path. So you could, for example, exclude in the SSL application, if you wanted to exclude everything under Microsoft Office, you could literally just put Microsoft Office in here, and every application that sits under that has that folder within its file path will no longer have SSL inspection being applied to it. The same again can be done with the allow following IP addresses. If you wanted to exclude all websites that have the URL Google into it, you can do that within here. And when users go to Google, as long as Google is in the URL bar, it will no longer be SSL inspected. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll skip over these parts because these are more related to safeguarding, but the most important ones really were around the allow following IPs, SSL, and the only filters. These are really important for you guys and obviously helping you manage things on the network side of things. Policies. Oh yeah. So the other thing is as well. Say for example, we wanted to create a shutdown policy as well. You can also schedule them. And you can schedule these policies to work at specific times, and you can also set them to work for a specific amount of time. So back when I was working in schools, I know that obviously around October time, you normally get the parents coming in for prospective year 7s. So what I used to do is I used to set the expire at times for that day, so that this policy will no longer kick in and will not prevent the computers from shutting down at a specific time. That's normally what I used to use the expire at for, but there's a number of different scenarios that you could be using this for. So you could have some form of exam, so you want it to be active during this exam time, and then you want to deactivate it after all these exams or a weird period that's going on go through. And you can obviously also set it to run at certain days or certain times. And you can also set it to run on a particular state, on a particular state. So it can either be when it's either logged on or logged off, or when it's both, depending on how funky you're feeling when you come to that. When I was talking about the group policy on steroids, you've got the ability to do log on and startup on here, which is the same terminology that is used with GPO. But obviously, the benefit with this is this becomes active immediately. Anything within Senso becomes active immediately. All you'd have to do is, obviously, if you were logged on, you log off, log back on, and it should kick in straight away. Obviously, with GPO, you either have to restart it or do a GP update or something along those lines. Most of our customers do schedule, because schedule just means it works all the time and straight away. But you do obviously have the power to do log on and start up. And with your policies, obviously, as a network admin, as long as you've got these tools, you've got the power of also using batch scripts, PowerShell scripts, VB scripts. You can obviously run all of these all of these into policies on your devices. And the power of that is so much stronger than anything that a group policy could provide, because these are running instantly and they can run from anywhere. Obviously, with group policies, you're depending on the devices having line of sight of your domain controller before they can run, or line of sight of wherever the script's being kept. You don't have that problem with Senso, because Senso is running from a cloud system and is applying this straight away from wherever it wants to be. You could have a teacher sat on the Bahamas on the beach and they're connected to Senso with their device. You can run a script while they're sat there on the Bahamas, and vice versa. You could do the same thing. You could be sat on the beach in the Bahamas on your mobile phone, run a script from there while the teacher's in school slogging their guts out, or you're there drinking a martini, and you can still sit there, apply the PowerShell script from the beach. Away you go. You haven't got to worry about it. It's straight away. You don't have to sit there trying to connect to a VPN to get to a group policy, to then apply a group policy and then get the user to GP update and hope that they have line of sight of the domain controller to run it. Hopefully that all makes sense. Obviously, again, just to remind you, if you do have any questions, fire them through. I haven't seen any questions come through yet, and Lisa's giggling in my ears as well. Yeah, the Bahamas comment, yeah. Okay. What shall we go to next? Access. So with your groups and things that you're setting up here, when you're setting up your permissions and your teachers for having access, and you want teachers to be able to access certain IT suites, so let's create an IT suite quickly here just so I can use that to mess around a bit. IT suite 1, let's just apply all devices. So I created my IT suite 1 here. Now what I want now is I want my teacher to be only able to see I only want my teachers to be able to see this group. I don't want my teachers being able to see any of these other groups. These are all for me as the network admin. I only want to manage these. I don't want anyone else managing these. So I'm going to add my basic teacher role that I've got here, and I'm going to give them view access permissions only. Click confirm. What this now means is that when the teacher logs in, and as long as they've got the basic teacher role applied to them, and we'll be talking about roles again in a minute, they will only, when they log in on the left hand side, they won't see any of these groups that we're seeing on the left here, and they won't see the device groups, they won't see policy groups or anything under this. All they will see on the left hand side is IT Suite 1. That's it. Now obviously if I apply the same access permissions to any more groups, they're going to see all of those groups too. The other thing that you can do when it comes to access permissions, say you've got your traditional IT suites, and I've got a teacher machine that's a teacher desktop that's always sat at the front of the classroom. What I can also do is do dedicated teacher PC desktop. What that means is I can actually specifically say that the IT suite in IT1, the IT1 suite computer, the teacher PC, is only able to see IT Suite 1. It can't see any of the groups. No matter what access permissions or anything like that the teacher's got to see all the other groups, that teacher PC, no matter what, can only see IT Suite 1. And we call this dedicated teacher PC. Now in the back end in the admin center, we're going to switch over to the devices section, and we're going to look for that IT Suite 1. I'm going to go to SC Azure 1. I'm going to pretend that this is that teacher PC. We're going to select it. I'm going to edit it. And then we've got this section here. We've got the general, and we've got restrict groups. And this is where I'm going to set this computer up to only see IT Suite 1. If you're a G Suite customer as well, you could also allow the teacher to still see their Google Classrooms, but obviously I'll come to Google Classrooms in a bit. But this does also allow you to obviously see G Suite classes on the left-hand side too as your groups. Click confirm on there. What that will now mean is any teachers that log into any basic teacher role people that log into SC Azure 1, the only group that they will see is IT Suite 1. I could give that basic teacher role all the groups under the sun here, but they will still only see IT Suite 1 when they're logged into the IT Suite 1 computers. FYI on everything I'm talking about as well, by the way, can be obtained from support.senso.cloud. I believe as well also this recording is also being recorded, so if you do need to refer back to it, you can. Because I do like to talk fast, but I do only have an hour to talk, so I'm trying to squeeze as much as possible as I can in. Lisa, you're the voice inside my head. Is there anything that you want me to cover that I have sort of missed from what I've gone through yet? You're on mute. No, you're not there at the moment. That's okay. Okay, so also as well, on the list view page that we're looking at right now, I've selected the device here, and I'm just going to show you some of the little functions across the top. I've got the picture of a little yellow passport. And this little yellow passport is going to show me all this device's details, from its device's name, its remote host name, its IP addresses, its user email, current logged in user, the domain that it's sat on at the moment. And then the next one underneath is going to show me its Senso group membership. Now, this is very important for you as network admins because it allows you to see the policies that are being applied to it. It allows you to see what priority that those groups have, and it'll sort of allow you to see if there are any problems or any concerns that you think you need to be aware of in here. I'm just going to see if I can expand that. Yeah. And then you've also got the Active Directory group membership. So you can see all of the Active Directory groups that the device has seen when it's connected and logged into Senso. And obviously you can see the full DN number in here. You can see the organization units and also see any security groups if it's a part of any security groups in here. And obviously we break down the organization units into individual groups on their own, allowing you to filter it. But you can also obviously use the full path if you need to on there. Also as well on here, you've got the ability to set the online, logged in, logged out, offline. You've got the ability to select online, select logged in only, select all. You've also got the ability to add these to groups manually if you wanted to. So you can manually add them to different custom groups if required. And also as well with the refresh button that you see here, now the page automatically, this frame here automatically refreshes. I think it's roughly every 10 to 15 seconds roughly. And then you can automatically refresh this every 8 seconds. Now the reason we don't allow you to refresh it straight away is because constant requests to our service can obviously cause a few issues. So we set it to 8 seconds so that you can manually reset it, and I think it's 10 to 15 on the automatic side. And then we've obviously got the stuff that you're probably already aware of, which is the thumbnail view. You may have also noticed in the recent update, we've got the ability to hide this section on the left-hand side, and it gives you a nice bigger view. You've also got the ability to stretch this even further, so it gets rid of the modules at the top and giving you a full screen view of all the thumbnails. And you could do that as well, the same thing as what I've just done there. You can also do that with the groups if you wanted to. And then across the top here, we've got obviously the categories, so you can categorize all your modules, etc. Now I'm going to go through some of these modules before I go into the back end of stuff. And I'm going to do this very quickly and briefly. But I'm going to go through some examples as well as to how I used it as a technician, especially when I had help desks coming in and had some of these weird and wonderful tickets that used to come in on the help desk. So moving along, we've got the client updater tool. Client updater obviously allows you to update the client via Senso, and again you can set this up as a policy so that the client updating is done automatically. We already update 90% of Senso automatically for you because we do it all via the contained modules, and we do it with the portal updates, etc. And all of that is done automatically by us. The only time updates are really needed for yourselves, any work that you guys that you need to do would be around the engine, which is the client essentially. And we allow you the ability to have that again automatically update so that you never ever need to worry about updating Senso yourselves. You never need to do it. Once you've installed it once, that's it. You should never need to worry about it. And if you've got it as part of your task sequence or your build process, again, you never need to worry about Senso because we can do all the updating for you. Block keys. Block keys is really useful for yourselves as network admins. One of the things that I used to hate getting from teachers was little darlings rotating the monitors on the screens. This actual module itself was actually requested by me when I was a customer. It was actually built for my organization that I worked for. So this was originally designed to prevent kids from creating that Windows 10 virtual desktops where they were able to hide their screens. But the other good use case scenario is preventing them from being able to rotate the monitors. And what you can also do is add in key combinations in here to prevent them from being able to do that. Again, any helps, any guides or tips on how to set this up are all done within the need help articles underneath it. Block USB does what it says on the tin. That one allows you to block the USB, but we also have the added ability to allow USBs that are protected by BitLocker. Again, both these modules here, I recommend using them as policies because policies are consistent. But if you run them ad hoc, if you run these two modules ad hoc, it will only run for that particular session. Once the client has either restarted or the user is logged off, it will remove the settings and it will go back to the way it originally was. The command prompt modules, along with the remote script module, is what are my two favorite modules to use within Senso because it allows me to do my job very, very, very quickly. I can obviously collect information, run commands, all sorts of things that I want to. We've got a number of Senso commands that are actually built into the command prompt module itself, which allows me to collect information quite quickly. It also obviously helps us from a support side as well, fix any of your problems if there are any. But obviously there's a ton of different commands that you can obviously run if you know your way around command prompt and you have to use it. You've obviously got the ability to use ipconfig all. You could even do GP update force from here if you need to. You've got all of that power here. And the thing is, the module runs as the local system user, so it's always running with administrative rights. The only thing that you do need to be aware of is it won't connect to any network drive. So if you run a command to connect to a network drive on your domain, it won't, because obviously it's using the local system user account on the computers. It will only be able to see files and documents within the computer itself when you're running these commands. End sessions, obviously this is where you can obviously set up your schedules. We have built in the power as well to prevent it from shutting down servers. So if you do install Senso on servers, which we do have quite a lot of customers that do this, we do have safety gaps in here to prevent servers from being shut down through this. Event viewer, this was the tool I used quite a bit when I was on the a help desk, because most of the things that you find, or if there are any errors on a device, you could normally find them using the event viewer on Windows 10. It was something I used all the time, even without Senso. I used to use event viewer. So being able to view and track exactly what was going on the device when an issue is reported to you, you can obviously get onto this. Use the event ID. Obviously, we all use Google to do our jobs. So you obviously searching the event ID into Google, you can obviously find out exactly what the problem is, see if other people have had the problem, and then hopefully find a fix for it. Exactly, yeah. So that's the other thing as well, as Lisa's just pointed out, is obviously you could do this all hidden in the background without them knowing you're doing it, which obviously means you don't have to disturb their day. You don't need to disturb or log or remote into their computers. You're doing this all hidden in the background. They have no idea that you're doing this. This is obviously a great benefit with the majority of the modules that we're doing here. You never have to disturb the person on the other end. You'll notice as well that I've got these little shortcuts here, and this is obviously like a GP update one. Now, with each one of these modules, you can actually, if it's a common command that you run all the time, you can actually save these as shortcuts. And what you can also do is create icons for them, like I've done with the GP update. And what this will do is, if I was to run this right now, it's going to run. The second I've clicked on GP update, it's run the module straight away, and it's run the command straight away. And now all these machines are sat there doing a GP update. Once that GP update has finished doing what it's doing, I should get the response back from the clients, like I have done here, telling me that it is run completely successfully. It's just a bit of a time save for yourselves, especially when you're running with remote scripts. Remote scripts shortcuts, I use them all the time. As you can see on the left-hand side of my drop-down, they're a godsend to run common issues that you find on devices. Skip over some of these. Mimic script. Mimic script is a good tool for yourselves when you're coming to work against software that doesn't like to be installed silently and can only be installed using a GUI. This will allow you to put in a load of keyboard commands and quick shortcuts and allow you to follow through a script so that it does it all automatically. I think one of the most common pieces of software that I used to have to use a GUI for was the old version of Adobe. Can't remember which version was. It was mainly school friendly. Some of you old school people will remember which one I'm talking about potentially. But the Mimic script is really useful for doing that sort of software. And the other thing as well, you can also use it in conjunction when you're on the thumbnail view. Say, for example, you want to control all of these machines' mouse control at the same time, which you can do within the thumbnail view. We can sit here, take control of all the devices all at the same time. Say we want to run some keyboard commands on those devices. This is where the Mimic script power comes in. So I could do all the mouse clicking all here, all around quickly at the same time, but I've then got them all on the same page where they need to enter a license key. Bang, enter the Mimic script in, click run, it will enter it on wherever the active cursor is at that time. Wake on LAN, you've obviously got the ability to use Wake on LAN and obviously it's like a cloud. We're sort of cheating when we're saying it's a cloud-based wake on LAN, but technically it is a cloud-based wake on LAN. But we're cheating by the fact that we're using a relay to connect to do the wake on LAN. So the setup guides for this on how to do this are all obviously on the support page. There are quite a few setup guides, quite a few prerequisites. Sorry, I couldn't get the words out of my mouth. There are quite a few prerequisites when it comes to this, so it's very important that you read through them before you set up power on and wake on LAN. But I used this the one time for an old head teacher of mine, and he wanted me to fix his computer, but he didn't want me to disturb him, and he turned his computer off, and I needed to fix it in the evening. So wake on LAN, I was able to do it from home, power the computers up from here, run whatever I need to do, and then shut it back down. It's obviously really useful for yourselves to be able to do this, and especially with the recent lockdown and COVID, being able to power on the machines from home without having to connect to a VPN or any of that horrible stuff. You can just open up a browser, go to the website, do what you need to do from here. I see that a question's come up. Lisa, is it? I can't quite read it. Are there or will there be pop-out options for modules? Is this to take any of these pages out onto a separate window? I think I know what you mean. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay. We've never had that asked, to be fair. I don't know whether you've had that asked, Lisa. I don't think that's not something I've ever heard requested, but I mean, it's something we can certainly look into. But you can obviously stretch these module windows out so that it comes up like this. So you do have that ability to actually to pop it out onto its own window. I can certainly investigate and add that to the potential roadmap, Bob, if that makes sense. Because every single I think that. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Cool. Where did I go? I was on Power On, was on Registry Editor. Again, this is really powerful to be able to register, edit registry keys on the fly. And again, the Registry Editor will run as the system user when you're applying these. So if you do anything in HKCU, just remember that when HKCU will be the system user, not the logged in user. So be well aware that you'll need the SID for the logged in user before you apply any registry keys into them. Remote script. Again, this is my number one favorite tool because I love PowerShell. Use PowerShell all the time for doing all sorts of things on here. But it's obviously really powerful to be able to do everything that you need to. So for example, if I wanted to find out whether our debug log files turned on, I've got the ability here to turn that on. And it's just all this simple command here is just a test path to make sure that this path exists and it comes back with true or false. And I can get even super fancier with my scripts. So this here is sort of telling me if there's any antivirus exclusions being applied using Windows Defender. So if you use Windows Defender from Microsoft, if you've got any exclusions set up within Windows Defender, this little script here that I've got here tells me that. And this is how powerful this tool is you can use anything within PowerShell. You've got the power to do that. The majority of what Intune does, I don't know whether most of you are aware of this, but a lot of what Intune does is all done with back-end PowerShell script. So for example, if you are an Intune user, you'll know that you have the ability to wipe a device. That is just it's just a PowerShell script. So when you click wipe device in Intune, it activates a PowerShell script that already exists on the device. A quick Google search and you will find that PowerShell script, and you can actually autopilot and send devices back to out-of-box experience from within Senso using that PowerShell script. And this is just why I love it. It's always been my favorite tool since the start. It's one of the oldest tools as well, but just having the power to be able to do everything with PowerShell is great. And then you've also got the power of batch scripts as well. So if you're a bit more old school and you know batch scripts, or if you're VB scripts as well, you've got that power in there to use all of those tools in here. Moving further on, you've got Security Center. It's sort of a quick help with GDPR, but there is a better tool in the fact that there's Asset Manager in the back end, which gives you a better report view of this. Services, being able to control the services, pretty much self-explanatory on that one. Great if you're commonly restarting print spoolers, which is obviously why that's the default phrase that's in there. Software, so this allows you to quickly search to see whether software is installed. It also tells you what version of the software is installed. Again, you can export this into a CSV or print it if you needed to. System info, so these tools that I'm showing here, the system info and software, there were two ones that I used quite a lot as well when I was in the help desk. Usually when you get those tickets coming in where someone tells you, oh, computer's really slow, it's an absolute nightmare to use, and you always kind of go, oh, roll your eyes when you hear about their computers being slow, because normally 9 times out of 10 it isn't slow. It's usually the person in the chair is a little bit slow. But with here, obviously what you're able to do is have a quick gander at their processor, see what processors on their device. Obviously these are Xeons because they're all virtual machines in Azure. But if you think their processor's a bit slow, right, okay, yeah, the user might potentially be right, the processor is a bit slow, so let's get that ripped out, get it swapped out. Same with memory, find out what memory is on the device and what type of memory, etc. You can also find out what graphics is on there. It'll also tell you as well what type of GPU it is, if it can. Also as well, if you've got Dell devices or HP devices, if you use the support category, this will actually take you directly to the drivers. There'll be a link that's set up in it, and it'll take you directly to the drivers for that machine, and allows you to obviously download the drivers for that exact model and that service tag of that machine. I used to use it quite a lot when especially with the slow comments, whenever you get slow comments, but a lot of what I use it for as well is also checking the BIOS versions, etc., checking the graphics driver, and also in what graphics are being applied. System info list allows you to pull out a quick list of their CPU, RAM, serial number of the device. Also allows you to see their IP address on very quickly as well. Task Manager, self-explanatory on that one. Allows you to end tasks. Also allows you to see what services are running and stop and start them or restart them. Also allows you to see what network connections each device as well, whether it's established or time wait. And you've got the vulnerability checker as well. This was kind of built back when the WannaCry days, when WannaCry came into existence. It allows you to see whether you are vulnerable for that. Have we got any questions before I move on to the admin center? Lisa, have you got any questions? I've been rabbiting on a lot and nobody's asked a lot of questions, so either I'm doing a good job or people are falling asleep. Hopefully. Okay, so I'll move on to the admin center stuff. I don't think I've missed anything on this page. If anybody has got any questions that they do come up with for this side of things, just quickly fire them through, and I'll swing back to it. So we're here on the admin center now on the back end side of things. This is mainly what you as network managers or network admins or IT techs will probably see. And obviously, if you've got organization admin privileges, you're going to see everything that I'm looking at on the left hand side. You got the device license usage, your active devices, console license usage, and unassigned devices. Be aware of the unassigned devices section. Unassigned devices means that the device in question hasn't got a site ID file, or it has been set to be untrusted, so it's not been trusted by our service. And all it means is all you have to do is just manually assign the device to the correct site that it needs to be assigned to. If you're seeing quite a high number of unassigned devices, it's one of two things. Either your installation method is, there's something wrong with your installation, essentially, or your installation command, or two, your device license usage is maxed out. The other thing that you need to keep on top of as well is your cleanup tools. the way Senso works, and I can quickly show you this on my virtual machine, I hope. When you add Senso to your device, you'll notice within the installation folder of the client, if my virtual machine isn't as slow as a dog, which it appears to be. So let me just see if I've got it on my one. Renato, senso.cloud. So within here, you've got a number of different files. Now, this file here and the Senso connection file, these two are important, and that they're what decide your connection in here. This file in particular is, if you were to delete this file, or if I was to delete this file, when I next reconnect to my portal, it's going to create a brand new license for me. This is the same again, if you want to install Senso and reinstall Senso, if that file is deleted or anything like that, it's going to create a new client within here. The same is said when you reformat the device, and even if you give it the same name, again, it is going to create duplicates in here. So all you need to make sure you do, you've got this nice little cleanup tool up here, which will allow you to clean duplicate named devices, and also allows you to delete devices that haven't connected for 30+ days, which I'm going to run now, and it's cleaned up 4 devices for me. If you've got quite a lot that it comes up in that list, it might be a little bit slower to clean up. However, I would just regularly, on a regular basis, when you're in here, just come jump in here, quickly just remove duplicate devices, bang, you're done. You don't need to worry about it again. When you do need to assign devices, it's just a case of assigning the device and selecting the site and then hitting save on here. I noticed I just clicked on iPad. Yes, we are currently in testing on iPad for anyone that does not already know. We're actually waiting on Apple now. So we're waiting for Apple to approve the release of it on the App Store. Once that's been done, you should see us appear in the App Store. You'll see a lot of notifications for that from our social media and our message board as well when it gets released. Console users. So this is where we can manage, this is obviously where we're going to be managing the permissions and managing what users have access to Senso. I'm going to start off by looking at the roles. One of my top recommendations when you're creating roles is to always use user assigned sites. We call this dynamic roles. This is especially useful when you've got when you manage more than one school or more than one site in Senso. So for example, if you've got 5 schools, user assigned sites allows you to create one role that will work across all 5 schools. But when the user logs in, they will only have that role's permissions based on whatever site that they've been assigned to. And I'll show you site assignment in a second when it comes to it. But the benefit of doing it this way, back when I first started with Senso, when I was a customer, they didn't have this dynamic role set up, and I looked after a very, very large estate. It's 116 schools and 16,000 devices. And the problem is that because they didn't have this dynamic roles, and I had technicians in each one of these schools, I had to create 4 different roles for each school. So it worked out to about 500 roles altogether. Now the problem is with that is if Senso make any change or add any new permissions or add any new roles, or add any new modules, you had to go through each individual role to add that new permission or add that new. Now, when it comes to 500 roles, that took me a lifetime to do, and I hate to do it. And back in those days, Senso was being updated on a weekly basis, so it was an absolute nightmare for me. So dynamic roles is really useful and it's a huge time saver, and I can't recommend it enough. Because it is a huge, you could for 5 schools you could have 4 roles instead of doing what I did where you had 5 schools and 25 roles, because it's just not manageable for yourselves. Then you got your permissions. You can add all your permissions in here. Anything on the permissions section except for the general side is all of the back-end admin center stuff. Under the general side, this is all the permissions where you could potentially break something. I don't tend to give teachers any permissions to any of these sections, mainly just because they don't need permissions to these. One particular group to pay attention to is the view all groups permission. Now, obviously, I covered the access section here on the main portal page, but if you were to give permission to the view all groups, this will override that group, these access permission groups. So it's very important that if you have that ticked, is that you make sure that you mean to have that tick, because they will see every single group and they'll see the site as well that they're assigned to, potentially seeing staff and other staff, etc. Modules, this is where obviously you add your permissions for your modules, pretty self-explanatory on that one. Role visibility is useful if you're an MSP or if you've got a technician in a particular site who you want the ability for them to amend this role but no other roles. Giving them the site visibility or their site that they're assigned to's visibility just allows them permission to be able to see this role and amend it if they need to. And then you've got the power, obviously, login restrictions, where you can set what day and time that they can be logged into, and also you can set the public IP address that they can log into the portal from. In the manage users section, you obviously also have as well, you guys have probably already done this quite regularly already, but I just wanted to highlight the dynamic roles section that I was just talking about. This is the site assignment bit here. This is where you assign what site they get applied to, and then what that will then mean. If I was to apply the basic teacher role to this user, they will only be able to use the basic teacher role at Senso Australia School. You can also as well apply login restrictions to one particular user. You don't have to do it based on the role. And then you've also got your alerts in here. So if you need to set up the safeguarding alerts, you've got the sections all done in here as well. Oh, I need a drink now, Lisa. Oh. Audit logs. Everything that you do in Senso is completely audited. Every click of the mouse, everything that you do, everything you click, everything you run, every computer you access, every computer you control, it's all viewable in here. Every module that you run on a machine, it also lists the machines that you're running it on as well. So be aware of that. We have had cases where this has been used in investigations on different things. So, and none of this data is deletable. I can't delete it. No one here. I think there's only one person in Senso who can delete, and he can only delete it with 3 letters of permissions from the organization's leaders, essentially. So nobody has access to this actual data except for yourselves and someone else with a lot of permissions, and none of it can be deleted. Site permissions. I'm gonna skip over site permissions. Do you think that's okay, Lisa? Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, site. Yeah. Yeah, I thought I'd better go. I was told to go in depth. Hopefully, I've not gone too in depth. Now you scared me. Now you said that. Okay. Detection libraries. I wasn't going to cover too much on safeguarding or logging, but I do want to just cover this because it has cropped up a few times on support. Detection libraries. When you've got different ways of logging and blocking in all sorts of websites in Senso. One of the most common ways that schools and organizations block websites on their organizations is to use the access module here. Now, for me personally, I would only use the access module when you're doing temporary blocks in the classroom. I wouldn't use the access module when it comes to doing permanent blocks. What I would use for permanent blocks is just look at using the safeguarding module and using a custom detection library like we've done in here. Now, with custom detection libraries, you have the power to actually add all sorts of different kind of blocks in here. You could add window caption blocks, website URL blocks, website content blocks, application blocks. The benefit of doing it all in one place, what I'm talking about here is obviously permanent blocks. But if you're going to be doing permanent blocks and they're going to be existent all the time, do it from here. It just means that there's a better control. You have a better overview of where this is being applied. The problem is with doing it on the access module is that the access module can also be run on all different types of groups and here, there, and everywhere, and it can be a little bit higgledy-piggledy and a bit confusing. doing it here, obviously it's been applied to your safeguarding policy, and it just gives you that bit more control. And when you start adding your phrases into here, so if I start adding in 888.com, and this is the other thing as well, don't add www into there, because if you add www, you're being explicit in the block. What I mean by explicit is if the user, if you were to have www.888.com, the user would still be able to get to 8888.com. They would only be blocked if the user specifically went to www.8888.com. God, I'm saying too many eights there. So just be aware to, when you're doing these blocks, make sure that you're only doing that or adding a dot at the beginning if you wanted to. You do the website URL, do the block, and bang it in there. There's also as well, you'll notice is that you've got website URL and website content. Who muted me? Then I got muted. As you'll see on here as well, you'll see the website URL, website content. And the differences between these two is that the website URL is everything that you're seeing in the URL bar essentially. Website content is a bit more ruthless and a bit more explicit. The most common one I've had coming on support is how does a user block the Google snake tail game. I'm going to show you an example of this one because it's quite a common snake game. I think it's on here for Google. It's this game here, this little badger. Yeah, there's a number of different Google games as well, which you can get picked up on. Is how do you block that? Because the problem is you can't really block the URL because it's Google and everyone uses Google, and it's a little bit difficult to pinpoint exactly what they're typing in on the top here sometimes. So what you can do is get a little bit more in depth. And what I mean by in depth, if we open up the developer tools and go to elements, I can actually look for this element in here, and anything that you're seeing, everything that you're seeing on here is the website content. So for example, if I was to highlight this section here, I could actually highlight that and add that as a website content block, and any websites that have that in their content, it will block them. You have to be very, very careful with these website content blocks. I can't stress it enough because it will look for that in all websites. So you've got to make sure that this, what you're doing right now, is very specific to the website that you're going on at that time. I think with the snake tail game, somewhere within here, there is a snake tail underscore or snake underscore game or something along them lines that you can use as a web content block. That's just something for you to be aware of when it comes to website content blocks, and especially when you come into websites that you don't want to block, but you want to block an element within the website. Click close on that one. You can also as well, if you wanted to, import a mass amount of URLs from via a CSV, and you could just download the CSV template in here if you needed to. Moving on, I know I'm running out a bit of time here as well. Asset Manager. So Asset Manager, again, it pulls out, if you haven't got Asset Manager, then I'm sorry. Hopefully what I'm showing you now might gain your interest. So within Asset Manager, it can pull out quite a lot of information. It'll tell you the device's name, manufacturer, model, serial number. It'll give you the last audit date. Now, this one hasn't been on this portal for quite a long time, so let me just find one that is a bit more recent. So I'm going to use this one here. So this here will obviously give us nice pretty charts because everybody loves a chart or pretty graphics. It's going to give us last user that logged into the laptop, most frequent user. It's going to give us the last boot duration. Again, this is useful for finding out those tickets and then those users that are sitting there telling us that their computer's slow at starting up. You're looking in here and say, for example, Mr. Spink, whose laptop this is, says to me, oh, my computer's really slow at starting up. And I sit and look at this and say, well, it only takes 7 seconds to boot up, mate. So how much quicker do you want it to be? You've got that control and power to see that within here, and you've also got the ability as well to see how much CPU is being used. So we obviously before with that system info section, we obviously saw what the processor was, but we're looking at this and we're seeing the average CPU usage for the last 24 hours, and it's not very high. obviously this is telling us that computer isn't being used. If obviously that CPU usage is a lot, our average CPU is a lot higher than that, okay, we probably need to do something about that. Moving on, we've got the operating system information. It also tells you the version. This is particularly useful in the current climate with Windows 10 and how often they update it, and how often they're now going out of end of life. Also gives you the BIOS and the motherboard information, memory and what memory card slot they're in, and the type of memory that it is, and how much capacity is. Again, gives you nice pretty graphics on the right hand side. It will tell you every single slot number as well if there was more than one slot. This is your hard drive information. It tells you the hard drive. It also tells you the partitions, each individual partition, and what drive letter, etc., is assigned to it. This is your Ethernet and your adapters, etc., that are on the device. And also as well, if it can, it will also tell you the average sent in received data on the bandwidth of the device for the last 24 hours. CPU information, graphics information, security information, and software information. Tells you all the installed software along with the versions. And you can also set up alerts with Asset Manager, which allow you to alert on certain information around CPU usage, disk usage, and also event viewer IDs as well. And all this information can be reported on across your entire state with a number of different reports in here as well. We're going to move on to the last bit now, which is the data sync section. Microsoft Teamsync, Azure Id Groups, and Google Classroom, and I'll quickly tell you about the safeguarding options here as well. Azure Id Groups, so authorizing is I explained to you at the beginning when we were talking about groups and the filtering of groups. You can obviously filter by AD groups, but to filter by AAD groups, you need to make sure this box is authorized. This will authorize the Senso client to be able to retrieve Azure Id Groups for a user when they sign into an Azure Id registered or joined device. Microsoft Teamsync is badly named now. Microsoft Teamsync now really ideally needs to be called Azure Id Sync, because this actually allows us to sync your Azure Id users into Senso. So you can create your console users automatically from your Azure Id. And this is especially useful if you're a hybrid environment or anything like that. It still works all the same. But it also as well, it can also create your automatic group mappings with Teams as well. So you can, if you've got your classroom data or your class data in your class rosters into Teams, you can automatically import all of that stuff and automatically create all your groups on the left hand side here based on your Teams data. And it only imports the Teams for people who are owners. So if you're the owner of the team, you'll see them on the left hand side. The members will appear as email filters on here, and as long as the users that are logged into the devices have their email addresses being assigned in here, and it's the same email address they use in Teams, they will be filtered into their Teams groups as expected. You've got a number of different options in here as well. You've got your default role. This is going to be applied to, and I'll explain the group mappers in a minute, but this role will be applied to anyone if you're not using the group mapping section, and if you've got this tick box here automatically ticked. Areas to sync, we allow you to sync because there's two different kinds of Teams groups. There's your Office 365 teams, and then there's your classes teams. This is important, especially for schools. In the majority of cases, you're going to probably only want to import your education classes. Teams as well, because like I said, this is Azure Id Sync. It's actually bringing in teams as security groups, but representing. What it can also do is actually bring in individual security groups too. By default, we untick this because on most cases, you've got thousands of security groups. But you do have that power and ability to bring them in if you wanted to. Only sync provision teams, it will only sync in teams that haven't been archived. So if you archive your teams, it will remove the teams out of Senso. And then you've got your automatically create users, and then you've got automatic create users for all group members. And what it means by group members is our group mapping section. What you're able to do is when you've created your roles in Senso, you can actually use Azure Id Groups to map to a particular group. So I think I've got some example ones here. Hopefully I'm using the right tenancy. Don't think I am. No, oh, there you go, testing AAD. So I can use a test laptops AAD group or testing AAD. This will allow me to sign anyone who is a member of that security group gets added to that role, and it gets their account created as well. Hopefully that all makes sense. Again, all of these guides for this are all on support.senso.cloud and full explanation on how they work. User import allows you to, if you wanted to be a bit more, if you wanted to manually create your users using Azure AD rather than using the automatically created. Unfortunately, I've got no users to import to show you there. But what this will do is it will show you all your owners of your teams. It won't show you students. It will only show owners of teams in the user import section. What you can then do is you can select which users you want to bring into Senso, and you can assign the roles to them and all the other good permissions that you need as well, straight from within there. It just gives you a bit more control if you wanted to do it that way. Google Classroom, if you haven't already, it's similar to the Microsoft Teamsync in the fact that it pulls in your groups on the left-hand side, but the only difference is that this only does the groups and it only does the classes. It doesn't bring in the users, it doesn't create the user accounts. So just be aware of that. Again, it's the easiest setup in the world, and we leave the instructions actually on the front page for you on how to set up. So if you do use Google Classroom, guides are all here linked on the actual page itself. And then you've got My Concern and CPOMs. I won't go through the setup of these because I don't have access to a My Concern or CPOMs to show you. But just so you're aware, with the safeguard inside, you can import, you can send any violations or logs straight into CPOMs from Senso. None of the data comes from CPOMs into Senso. We can only send to them. We don't access their data whatsoever. Just gives you a little bit more of a time saver. Also gives your DSLs a little bit more of a time saver as well. And I think that is everything. Oh, and I still see I still haven't got any questions. Please, I'll stay here for another 5 minutes. If you do have any questions, bang them in. I'll cover them over. But if there are no questions, I'll let you guys go. Hopefully I haven't sent anyone to sleep. Hopefully you've all enjoyed that and you found it useful. If you do have any questions, or if you feel like I haven't covered everything, or if there's something more that you want from me, just make sure you connect with us on the live chat in the top right hand corner. You'll not only come through to me, you'll come through to the rest of my team. You should get a response from them within a minute. We say a minute, it's usually seconds on most cases. If you have any questions at all, fire them in there. If you've got a question you specifically want to ask for me, when you come into the chat, just say, is it possible to speak to Owen? And I'm happy to give you a chat. And if you want to arrange a phone call or arrange a one-to-one session with myself, then obviously I'm also happy to do that as well with yourselves. Will we be able to view this as a recording afterwards? Yes, you can. Alexandra will, I believe, send out the webinars. However, I'm not sure if you automatically get them. You'd have to ask. If you email success@senso.cloud, Alexandra will be able to get back to you straight away on that one. Any more questions from anyone? As I say, I'll wait here for 5 minutes. If there's no questions, then I'll let you go. I am going to quickly pop away for 2 seconds, get a drink, and when I come back, hopefully there are some more. But if you are going now, enjoy the rest of your day and hopefully talk to you soon. I'm literally just waiting for questions, but I don't think there's any coming in at the moment. So I'm just going to quickly pop away a second. Hang on 2 secs.
back up, or are you gonna wrap it up?
No, it's all done. They've all gone.